Hello, and thank you for joining us today as we go through this next episode of the Estriva TA Circle Masterclass program. This episode of the Masterclass program is all about the future of recruitment. So, not just building the skills that you need for today's challenges, but setting you up for success for tomorrow's future opportunities. I'm Joey Price, and I will be joined today with our masterclass experts, Carlos Duarte, who is the head of talent acquisition for Latin America at Mars, as well as another colleague of ours, Abishek Day, who is joining us from India, and he is going to talk more about his experience as the vice president of talent acquisition at Highradius. And maybe if there's time, we'll talk about his PhD trainings. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us, Joy.
Thank you, Joy.
Now, awesome, awesome. Well, I'd love to get into the questions, but first of all, would you all care to share a fun fact about yourselves, maybe the work that you're excited about, or just something so that our audience can learn more about you today?
Sure, I'll go first. I'm very excited to share a little bit about the future of recruitment. That is my passion. Really happy to share space with Abishek and really get to know more about his space and what they're doing around this. And fun fact about myself, I've never broken a bone.
All right.
All right. So since Joey talked about my PhD, I am working on employer branding as one of the areas of interest in PhD. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. And with the advent of technology and AI, the possibilities of what one can do with content is endless, and that's something that I'm really looking to talk about briefly in some of the areas that we touch upon today. Fun fact about me, taking a cue from Carlos, I have broken quite a few bones. Been a very naughty kid. So yeah, I have, and plus I ride my bike as well, and I'm not necessarily a very safe rider. So
All right. Well, Abhishek, we hope that you have broken your last bone and that's not a part of your story moving forward. But today, let's go ahead and jump into our topic. We're talking about the future of recruitment. And Abhishek, you've mentioned AI, which I know we will talk about a lot in our conversation today. Now, I want to pose a question to you both. And Carlos, please feel free to answer first. Considering the rapid evolution of jobs and skills due to these technological advancements, how should HR departments adapt their recruiting strategies to ensure they're attracting talent that's not just relevant for today, but also for the future needs of the organization? Carlos, would you mind going first?
Yes, Joey, of course. Well, first of all, I think the HR departments and recruitment departments, talent acquisition areas need to stay connected to the business. I think one of the main focuses is to be a function that partners very good to the business. A lot of these functions work separately sometimes and they get lost in the vision, on the needs, on the connection with the business and their main stakeholders. So I think one of the main things the HR and talent acquisition areas should focus on is staying connected to the business, understanding the needs that they will have for the future, and from there, start forecasting what will be the needs that they will need for the job descriptions. A lot of the talent today, talking about remote talent, talking about freelancers, a lot of people are going to look for different scenarios when they go back to work or when they start looking for opportunities. So the focus on skills, not just credentials, staying connected to the business, is going to be very relevant.
Abhishek, what do you think?
100%, I agree. What I would want to probably add on is with AI coming in, and with that, some of the redundant parts of the job going away. I think a lot of our jobs, the way they look today, is going to look very different maybe even 2 years later, right? Because let's say a talent acquisition professional, right, a recruiter. 5 years back, a lot of time was spent by recruiters in vendor management, talking to candidates, going through lots of CVs, etc. With the advent of even basic sort of parsing technology in terms of AI, has helped take away a lot of their time from just manual screening of resumes to just looking at qualitative conversations with candidates, right? And especially in the technology space, adoption of some of these technologies are faster, and which is where I think jobs will change and evolve and become more upstream in the value sort of chain than transactional. So probably in jobs where it is 80% transactional, that's where people will potentially have to upskill themselves to doing more strategic stuff, because a lot of the transactional stuff can be taken care of very efficiently at that, with technology. So that would be my addition. Obviously, with that, and coupled with how businesses are growing, I think I think you'd see a lot of firms diversifying. FMCG companies would not no longer be purely FMCG plays. They will also be technology plays, and hence the skills that you'd be hiring for will overlap quite a bit across industries.
Okay, so gentlemen, if I could dive deeper into this conversation, would you say that HR departments should focus more on soft skills and adaptability? So maybe a more broad approach, or should they lean in onto continuous learning and being a talent that's more specialized to tackle specialized programs? What are your thoughts?
I'll probably take a stab at it first. That's okay. I think yes and no to both, right? Because let's say if you're hiring fresh talent from universities, they're for sure, or even early in career talent, you're looking at more of adaptability, right? Broader skill sets. Whereas as you go up the value chain, then probably you're looking at specialization, looking at people who can bring fungible skill sets to the workplace, rather than having to pick something up from scratch. However, I would think of that as a slight bit of inverse as you go further up. When you look at top management, then again, I'm looking at broader skill sets, right? So it's a little bit of an inverse equation, if you will, to my mind, where soft skills and broader skills become really important at the beginning of someone's career. Then someone specializes, and so most of my mid management, mid to senior management would be some of those specialized skills. Top management again, we'll be looking at people with broader skill sets.
Okay. My point on that, I would emphasize soft skills. I agree. There's different levels. You cannot put them in the same bucket. For example, in the food industry, you have a position that are flavorists, and flavorists are very unique in their craft and what they do. Sometimes soft skills are not the priority when hiring a very talented flavorist for the food or fragrance industry, right? So I agree, you cannot put them in the same bucket, but most of the time I would emphasize on soft skills, and they are non-negotiable. When you cannot emphasize on soft skills, whoever you hire is going to be a team player. It's going to be somebody that can be have a positive attitude, positive thinking, moving forward attitude, because it can become a toxic player for the rest of the team, and share that toxicity with the rest of the team. So I wouldn't put them in the same bucket, but I would do the 80% emphasis on soft skills and develop the skill.
All right. Great answers from you both. I think this has been our conversation is off to a great start. So let's pivot a bit from skill and let's talk about geography. As remote work becomes more common and organizations look globally for talent, what challenges and opportunities does this present for traditional recruitment methods? And how might the definition of culture fit evolve in a globally dispersed workforce? Now, we're chatting with two outstanding gentlemen in different areas of the globe, so I'd love to get your global perspective on this.
Okay,
Abishek,
uh,
please.
sure. Interesting. Firm that I worked with prior to this went completely remote, so I can speak to this a little bit. One, if you look at tactically from a talent acquisition perspective, the access to a pool increases big time when we look at remote hiring. It just, the boundaries blur, access to jobs become more democratized, and which is all good stuff, right? And hence every organization has a shot at the best possible talent out there, provided everything else falls into place. With in office jobs, there are always these constraints around or whether you have an office in that location, hence will you be able to hire. So all of that goes away with remote, which is great. This culture fit thing is an interesting concept which probably was useful where it was introduced, maybe the turn of the last decade as well. I think now people are looking at more culture add-ons than just culture fits. Yes, a baseline of non-negotiables would be there in terms of culture, but then you're always looking at least for some of these remote firms or global firms, they are looking at people who bring in a different perspective and a different flavor to their overall global workforce. So it's just me, but I think culture fit is passe. It's just something that no firm's going to look at maybe another 10 years down the line. It's going to be more of a culture add-on, and what more can someone do?
Interesting, interesting. Abhishek, that's a very fresh and new perspective. Now, Carlos, what are
No,
your
it
thoughts
is.
on this
And you know
topic?
what? I 100% agree. How can a company call themselves like a diverse company in reality when I'm not allowing other cultures to come in and shape the culture of the company? If I'm already fitting somebody in that needs to fit a certain culture, because if not, I'm not going to hire that person, then I'm not being inclusive and I'm not being diverse. So I 100% agree. That was going to be one of my takes. Actually, your question is in two parts. The first, the remote work part, there's a lot of pros and cons, no? And Abhishek, I'm not going to repeat what you said, agree on what you said, but one of the challenges I would put on the table as well, that competition, right? You're getting better talent availability in the market that can also drive an increased competition and compensation expectations. And that's what I'm dealing with on my side of the world. This is, yes, we do have remote workers, but that is driving higher talent competition, that is driving higher salary. And that's just something to keep an eye out, right? The other one is it's hard to really onboard somebody into a company that's 100% remote because it is hard to work 100% remote. Hybrid models, remote models, they all have their pros and cons. But working 100% remotely, it's hard to connect with the people, to really have those connections that we used to have back in the day. I'm not saying you cannot work. Of course you can. You can do everything. The only thing is that personal connections that are not allowing you to really connect with the people in workspaces. So that is something I would add there. And on the cultural fit, I agree 100%. We need to bring different types of cultures to a company to really make it diverse. If not, we're only going to be stuck with the same culture for years. And I agree. And it's going to be probably less than within a decade, Abhishek. I say within the next 5 years, we're going to start seeing that shift, moving from recruiters hiring for a cultural fit, and they're going to go away from that and start hiring different cultures to create their own company culture with the employees.
All right. So, gentlemen, it looks like there's a bit of consensus here around the topics of the challenges that remote work faces, but also the opportunity of having a global workforce. Let's shift gears a little bit, and instead of talking about connecting with talent, let's talk about connecting with technology. The next question that I want to present to you all is, in what ways can AI help to reduce human biases traditionally seen in recruitment? And how can HR practitioners ensure they are maximizing the benefit of these tools for a more equitable hiring process? What are your thoughts?
Carlos?
Sure. Thanks, Abhishek. Okay, so we gotta start from a place where different countries are at a different stage in terms of diversity. For example, in my part of the world, Brazil, which is a huge country, has a quote that we need to meet for the government, that we have to hire a specific percentage of diverse talent for different functions, right? And there's a lot of technology that's out there that helps us and can help you doing this type of work. And a lot of companies are pioneers. There's global companies, tech companies. A lot of them, Abhishek will probably share more on this as he's the expert on technology. But blind screening, right? From hiring managers, first, I think it takes from the hiring manager. They need to be educated. They need to know how to manage a recruitment process, how to select. and start with the manager. But then technology can allow it to give those managers information that removes that bias. Names, maybe locations, maybe genders, maybe things that would give off that it's not a diverse talent. Even the wording, there's technology that scraps the resumes, changes the wording to indicate so you don't know. There's technology that allows you actually for the interview to gives you specific questions to ask, so you step away from asking those questions that can maybe be gender biased. Even the job postings, there's certain technology that allows you to use the right wording on your postings so that diverse talent can really apply. Because if I see certain job postings and it's very specific to something that might be not diverse as how I would like it to be, I will not apply. So technology can do lots of things, and I think we're evolving very, very fast. But there's actually challenges on this too. It's not only that technology will figure out everything and solve all the problems. The challenge is here. It's how do we create the right algorithms? Because if we're not creating the right algorithms within the technology that we're using, we're going to be stuck in the same place. And maybe Abhishek can share a little bit more on this.
Thanks,
Abhishek, your
Carlos.
thoughts?
And it's a great point in terms of the algorithm. Now, how some of these tools work is how you train the algorithm, right? You need to train the model. There's a very interesting study around dogs and wolves that was done in the US, and people were fed pictures of dogs in snowy conditions, and yeah, the algorithm after a point confused between a dog and a wolf, which was weird. Now imagine that situation in a hiring situation, right? If the algo is not trained well enough, model's not trained well enough, you might end up making really wrong hiring decisions or selecting in the wrong person for the wrong job, because you're basing the top of funnel for your hiring on how software selects something in or out, right? So that's definitely one. And like Carlos said, there is software that can change the gender tone of a job description. So there's one example that comes to mind, Textio does that for job descriptions. You can actually change a very masculine job description to a more gender neutral. They give scores, so the possibilities there are endless. But what I would like to really say is this: all of this is created by humans, right? Now humans inherently, all of us have our own biases. We may agree and do not agree, and that will reflect in the algorithm that's created. So unless that's weeded out, it'll never be a bias-free algorithm, right? And then the next part is around the entire morality of all of this. Now imagine a situation there where you do not select someone in, and the person is qualified by all means, where you're just, let's say, this same diversity situation, we are selecting in a woman versus selecting in a man, while both of them have the same qualifications through software. It is unfair, morally unfair for the man, right? I'm not necessarily talking about gender diversity numbers, etc., but then just if you look at that individual, it's unfair for that person. So then there's that entire moral question, right? How is the algorithm working? There is talk about a lot of these algorithms becoming self-trained and training themselves over a period of time, right? That is scary because there's no code for morality that you're inputting into the system, and the system will not be able to take an emotional based decision. And that's where I think the man in loop sort of concept for any of these autonomous software, for fancier things like autonomous cars or missiles, to slightly less dangerous things like recruiting, is very important because yeah, you don't know what a self-learning sort of algorithm can do in the future and how much of a havoc it can create because it doesn't really have moral undertones.
And
Okay, so
some way to
go ahead, please
mitigate
tell us.
this. Yeah, some way to mitigate this around once you implement this type of technology, you need to start having regular audits. You need to start getting feedback from the recruitment process from
Feedback
the
loop, absolutely, yeah.
what are they going through. Even yourself or your team needs to go through that to make sure it's been looked at because you cannot take the human side of it out entirely. We need to be involved. We need to be reviewing. We need to be checking. And as Abhishek mentioned, this if being unsupervised and if it's self-learning, it's probably going to go directions where you never thought it would go. So really need to be on top of this, regular audits, feedbacks, different scenarios where your team uses the platforms and technology are going to be very much needed.
Carlos, you took the words out of my mouth, and my next follow up to this conversation, because AI is probably one of the most polarizing aspects of our industry at this point, and there are so many emotions around it. One of them being fear. So, if you could give maybe 2 to 3 practical steps of what HR practitioners should be doing to make sure that they're getting the most out of their AI tools that you're introducing into the recruiting process. What are 2 to 3 things that we should be doing today to make sure that our future is successful?
Abhishek,
Sure. So this is an example that I gave in one of the other sort of round tables that I was part of. AI is like a knife. Now you decide what you want to do with it. In the hands of a murderer, a knife can be put to different uses. In the hands of an expert chef, it can be put to completely different uses, right? So I think it's about intent and being able to pick up how a particular tool or technology needs to be used correctly. And Carlos touched upon it. Regular feedback and audit is important just to ensure that like technology is not a black box which is just throwing out output for us, and we don't know how to solve for what is happening in the inside of it, because that's super important, right? Secondly, I think awareness that the human in the loop is important. It's not just there just to be like a watchdog, but it's important, and that's the main part of an activity rather than the technology. Technology is an enabler, but the human is the main person taking a decision, right? Because that awareness is super important. Else, you'd leave the decision to AI, and you'll end up wondering why a wolf became a dog. Thirdly, I think to my mind, there needs to be enough sponsorship top down around investment in technology and investment in AI, because it's not a standalone thing. It's not like you use it in something and then just forget about it. It's a way of how you operate and how you're trying to drive efficiency. So while yes, there are cost benefits, there can be impacts on people's psychology around, hey, is my job at risk if a AI bot does 80% of what I'm doing? What do I do? So I think some of those decisions need to be taken a little more sensitively, so that there's enough buy-in across the organization before a change is implemented.
Okay, and Carlos, what are your thoughts?
you know what? It's not going to be very different from what Abhishek has mentioned. The technology, you really got to know what you need technology for. It's not just the sake of implementing something for the sake of just having it. You really got to understand what are the needs and what type of technology you need and how it connects with your current technology and how you create the suite of technologies and not end up creating a Frankenstein of different technologies that don't even talk to each other because you'll end up in the worst place. First, as he said, technology, it's an enabler. So it's the human. I would say the first thing is the human needs to design, stay there on top of it, audit, feedback, be present at all times while the technology is being implemented, used, and what is being used for. Number two, it's having the people that are using the technology use it in the right way. I would say training the people, upskilling, reskilling, whatever you go through, because the information is going to be as bad as or as good as it goes in, right? So using the people, having the people trained, making sure they know how to use the technology to input the right data, create the right algorithms, do the right thing in the technology to get the right information. And the last, I would agree, it's having a buy-in from the executive team, key stakeholders. I mean, they're the end customer at the end of the day. All we are doing is to really service our clients, which are that section group. So really having the buy-in, they know what we're using the technology, what are the pros, cons, anything that can happen. So you have that buy-in. It's really important.
All right. Okay, thanks, Abhishek. Thanks, Carlos, for your thoughts here on the Astriva TA Circle Masterclass program. We've got a couple more questions here, so let's keep this momentum going. And I want your honest opinion on this because we're at a critical place right now with AI technology, and we should be very real about where we are today and the opportunities that exist for us in the future. So, I just wanted to ask you, do you believe that the current recruitment technologies, such as AI driven resume screening and virtual reality assessments, do they offer a more inclusive recruitment process than traditional methods? Why or why not?
It's a
Abhishek first.
Yeah, for
Abhishek,
me,
you
it's a
first.
contextual question, really, because it's a yes and no, or maybe it's a maybe answer to this, right? For me, like we both talked about, there definitely are advantages, right? There are time advantages, but then if you're leveraging the time advantage, you're not necessarily being very inclusive. You are not selecting a certain part of the applicants and selecting a certain part to go ahead, and that's how you're getting the advantage of time. If you're looking at quality advantages, again, it's basically a screen out sort of a method, right? Most of the resume parsing sort of technology. However, if you're looking at things like Carlos talked about, resume masking services, or things like how do you make job descriptions more gender neutral? Those, yes, definitely are more inclusive and would make a certain section which would otherwise not apply then apply to those jobs. So yeah, for me, it's a yes and a no sort of an answer to this, depending on what it is used for.
Carlos, do you have thoughts?
You know what? It's not going to be very much different, to be honest with you. It's a reality. We still. What about comfort? Technology. Not all people are used to being in a process where they have fully technology implemented. And I'm talking, there's a lot of emerging markets that we service. You know, it's not all Europe, the US, where it's, first worlds and all the technologies being used. A lot of the countries where we work for, people are not that used to using types of technology that might make them uncomfortable. And there we're creating, you know, it's a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge. I don't think it's right. I think it's a yes or no answer as well. And those are some another example of what Abhishek also shared. But I would agree 100%.
Well, what are some things that you think we might lose or have yet to replace with technology when we think about the human element? What are some of the things that human element we think can do today that AI is not doing today?
That
Carlos, you go first.
connection. Thank you, Joy. That connection with the candidate. I don't even. There's when you're being interviewed or when you're in a selection process, when the recruiter is really paying attention to you, really connected to you, really can look at those emotions. There's some things that AI now cannot detect. AI, it's great and it can do a lot of things, but I think that human connection piece is not one of them. That sentiment, that engagement, because as a recruiter, you're the first door to the company, you're the ambassador, and if a candidate can connect with you and feel that through you, it's not going to feel that through a machine. It's not going to feel that through any technology. It's what you make them feel that technology will not.
Also, I would like to think that as recruiters, we have a slightly higher responsibility than just filling requisitions. We're also ensuring that we do the right thing by the candidate, right? So yeah, it's not just about doing the right thing by the company, but I would like to think that we should be doing the right thing by the candidate as well. So when it's a win-win, that's when the recruiter wins. I don't know if AI can do that and bring that sort of emotional quotient to the table, because as recruiters, we are career coaches, we are business enablers, we are inspiring the candidate at one point in time. We're providing feedback. We are also giving hard feedback to the candidate, saying that, hey, why didn't you join interviews on time? It's unprofessional. Da, da, da. Providing feedback to hiring managers. I think there's a lot more that we do than we are probably given credit for, which I don't think AI can do. Yes, it can take away some of the transactional pieces, like the screening piece that we talked about and stuff like that, or the scheduling piece. But the entire candidate journey and the experience that Carlos talked about, and the fact that we need to create that win-win between the company and the candidate, that I don't think AI can do.
Okay, so what I hear you both saying is the human element will always or should always be a part of the future of talent acquisition and recruitment process, no matter how AI advances or not. All right.
Yes,
Absolutely.
should.
Okay. All right. Great. 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 So Carlos is our resident sports guy here, a huge sports fan. Let's just say we've done this conversation today with 4 quarters, okay? But this is overtime, so we've gotten away from technology here. Let's focus back on that human experience. So the last question that I want to ask for you both, and Carlos, please lead the way. Is there a direct correlation between the candidate's experience during the recruitment process and their perception of the company's overall brand and values? Carlos,
Oh,
lead the
yeah.
way.
No, thank you, Joey. Very good question. And I would say 100%. 100%. Obviously, there's a direct correlation between the both because first impressions matter. First impressions matter. Once you talk to that candidate for the first time, they're gonna feel how you live the values, how you live the culture. You're gonna hear the brand, you're gonna hear about the company, and that's gonna start to engage you, and that's gonna be you're gonna really get a feel of what is like to work there from the recruiter. What, how do they live the values? How do they live the brand? And that either is going to make it or not. And the candidate either is going to be engaged or is not going to be engaged. So it's a reflection of the organization, values, brand, culture, whatever you want to call it. So yes, I think it's 100%
Okay.
directly correlated.
Abhishek, your thoughts.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's just that it's like an Alice in Wonderland sort of a moment where everything that you see on employer branding, and no company is going to say that they're bad, right? So everyone puts up these values, and you have these fantastic videos out there on career pages and stuff like that. So that's the door really that you see, and you get the keyhole moment when you speak with the recruiter. That's what gives you the actual peek into what's behind the door. So irrespective of how beautiful the door is, unless that keyhole moment really lives up to the promise that an employer brand makes through all of its communication strategy, it's going to fall flat, right? So it's like a Christmas tree. You have all the bells and whistles, but without the tree, there's no Christmas. It's the same thing. A candidate experience is a true representation of the employer's brand, and I'd probably extend it a little further. Like you may still fool the candidate through the entire thing. Person joins, and that's a real moment of truth, right? The actual experienced brand value versus the promised brand value. If there's a gap, the further the gap is, the quicker the candidate's going to leave.
All right. Well, so gentlemen, this has been a great conversation. Carlos Duarte, head of talent acquisition for Latin America at Mars. Abhishek Day, vice president of talent acquisition at Highradius, also a PhD scholar. And sir, congratulations, and I wish you continued success in your studies. If I were to wrap this conversation up, I would say that the future of recruitment is evolving, but the human element will always be there. Do you all care to agree, disagree? You have any parting thoughts you wish to share about the conversation we've had today?
100%. I totally agree.
Carlos?
Yes, I would say that the human side will also need to evolve within the AI part. That's going to just be part of the new skill set that HR professionals will need to develop. And I would say just stay close to the business, stay close to the people, stay close to the technology. And I agree 100%. Thank you.
All right, great. Carlos first, and then Abhishek. Where can people find you online? Do you have a LinkedIn? How can people find you online?
Yes. Yeah, people can just find me with Carlos Duarte on LinkedIn, and I'm online. Just look for my name. I will be there, accept your solicitations. So please follow me and share some of your experience with me.
Same here on LinkedIn as Abhishek Day. the spelling's the same. So yeah, you'll be able to find me as well. Also on Twitter, with the same name. So we, well, connecting on LinkedIn would be easier.
Great. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you all for being here. And to our community, thank you for engaging with the Astriva TA Circle Masterclass program. There's a growing library of content for you to elevate your skill and learn more about great leaders in our space who are paving the way, such as Carlos and Abishek here. So make sure you check out the catalog, and we will see you on a future episode. Take care.